Welcome to this explainer. I am so incredibly glad you're joining me today. Imagine walking into your favorite college lecture hall, grabbing a comfortable seat right in the front row, and getting ready for just a massive, sweeping story. Today, we're going on a journey that traces the very birth of a science. We're going to travel all the way from ancient magical beliefs about the supernatural straight through to the precise and honestly highly debated modern psychological laboratory. So, let's dive right in.
I want to kick off our class today with a pretty provocative question. Is psychology actually a science? I mean, think about it. Can we truly take a ruler to a thought? Can you put a feeling on a scale and weigh it, or measure an invisible memory? This is the exact question that has haunted the discipline literally since its inception. In fact, the pioneering American psychologist William James famously lamented back in 1892 that psychology was really just a string of raw facts and gossip. He said it was no science, it is only the hope for a science. So how exactly did we get from that distant hope to the rigorous experiments we know today?
Part 1. The Mystery of the Mind, from ancient spirits to early medicine. To really wrap our heads around the mystery of the mind, we have to go way, way back. We're looking at prehistoric skulls from Puntillo, Peru. Notice those large, deliberate holes chipped right into the bone? This is evidence of a visceral, ancient practice called trepanation. You see, early humans believed that mental illness, like unpredictable behavior or completely unrealistic thoughts, was caused by evil spirits trapped inside the head. So they performed this crude supernatural intervention, literally chipping away at the skull to let the evil demons escape. It's definitely a shocking visual, but it perfectly captures how humanity first wrestled with the mind before the concept of science even existed.
This practice was deeply, deeply rooted in a worldview known as animism. Well before the ancient Greeks began searching for natural, logical causes for human behavior, humanity relied entirely on the supernatural. And, you can kind of understand why. They believed absolutely everything in nature was alive, driven by a mystical breath of life. To them, it made total perfect sense. If that spirit left the body, it caused death. If a bad spirit somehow entered, it caused madness.
Part 2. From Philosophy to Science. Measuring the Immeasurable.
As that deep philosophical wonder slowly transformed into actual scientific inquiry, early thinkers slammed into a massive hurdle, the mind-body problem. How exactly does the physical, tangible body interact with the invisible, ethereal mind? The philosopher Roderick Chisholm used these quirky, adorable little birds to illustrate this giant puzzle. The solid bird represents the physical body, and the dotted, transparent bird is the mind. It's such a playful way to show really dense philosophical theories. On the top left, we have interactionism, showing arrows going both ways, meaning the mind and body affect each other, which is a concept popularized by Descartes. Then down below, there's materialism, where that dotted bird just completely disappears, suggesting that only the physical body actually exists. This philosophical puzzle absolutely had to be wrestled with before psychology could ever step foot into a lab.
So, the crucial turning point is right here on this timeline. This is the exact moment where psychology finally leaps out of the philosopher's armchair and directly into the laboratory. In 1875, William James sets up a small equipment room at Harvard. Then, just 4 years later in 1879, Wilhelm Wundt opens the official first psychology laboratory in Leipzig, Germany. Finally, researchers were trying to empirically, scientifically measure human conscious experience. But as you'll see as we move forward through time, simply deciding to measure the mind was really only the beginning. Determining exactly how to do it, well, that would trigger decades of intellectual warfare.
Part 3. The Battle of Schools. Dueling Ideologies of the Mind.
As this young science blossomed, it completely fractured into what was basically a heavyweight boxing match between two wildly different disciplines. In one corner, we have John B. Watson's behaviorism. He demanded that we only study what we can physically, objectively see, essentially treating humans like complex machines simply responding to their environment. Behaviorists entirely rejected the study of consciousness altogether. But in the opposite corner, you've got Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis, plunging deep into the invisible, highly subjective unconscious, dealing with hidden motives and repressed memories. I mean, they literally could not be more fundamentally opposite in their view of humanity.
To truly understand just how radically absolute the behaviorists were about the environment shaping our destiny, listen to this infamous, incredibly theatrical claim from John B. Watson back in 1926. He boldly stated, "Give me a dozen healthy infants, well-formed, and my own specified world to bring them up in, and I'll guarantee to take anyone at random and train him to become any type of specialist I might select, a doctor, lawyer, artist, merchant chief, and yes, even into beggarman and thief." Talk about a manifesto. Watson believed your environment was absolutely everything.
What do you think? Are your talents innate or are they purely trained into you?
But look, this objective behavioral approach wasn't just tough talk. It actually had incredible practical power. Let me share a classic lecture hall anecdote about a young boy named Peter. Now, Peter had an intense, paralyzing fear of rabbits. Watson, teaming up with researcher Mary Cover-Jones, decided to try something they called counter-conditioning. They put Peter in a 40-foot-long room to eat his lunch. They brought in a caged rabbit, but crucially, kept it far enough away that Peter wasn't disturbed. Then, every single day, they moved that bunny just a tiny bit closer while he happily ate. Over time, the pleasant experience of eating lunch totally replaced the fear. The result? Little Peter was eventually able to eat his food with one hand while petting the rabbit with the other. It was a brilliant, early example of successful behavior therapy.
Part 4. Treating the Troubled Mind. The Unconscious Speaks.
So, while the behaviorists were slowly moving rabbits across rooms, the psychoanalysts were exploring completely different territory. Take the totally fascinating case of Anna O. She was a bright 21-year-old woman who suddenly developed these completely mysterious physical symptoms: paralysis, nausea, and a perpetual intense squinting of her eyes. Her doctor, Josef Breuer, who actually heavily influenced Freud, decided to hypnotize her. And under hypnosis, he discovered something amazing. Her squinting began during a tearful vigil by her dying father's bedside. She was crying so incredibly hard that when he asked her the time, she had to forcefully squint through her tears just to see the clock. The major breakthrough came when Breuer realized that simply by uncovering and talking through this deeply hidden, repressed emotional memory, her physical symptom just vanished. The unconscious was speaking, and it demanded to be heard.
And right smack in the middle of this fierce debate between the behaviorists and the psychoanalysts, yet another rebel faction emerged: the Gestalt psychologists. Their foundational insight literally started on a train ride. Max Wertheimer was riding a train in Germany when he looked out the window and noticed two distinct blinking lights on a crossing display. But they didn't look like two separate lights. To his brain, they looked like one single light moving rapidly back and forth. He was so struck by this illusion that he got right off the train in Frankfurt, bought a toy that mimicked the effect, and started researching. He proved that the mind isn't just some passive receiver, it actively, beautifully organizes the world into wholes. It was a massive crack in the behaviorist paradigm.
Part 5. The Cognitive Revolution. The Return of the Mind.
Look at this incredibly dense but utterly vital quote from psychologist Charles Osgood in 1953. He's talking about a learning experiment involving a buzzer and an electric shock, and he notes the presence or absence of a representational mediation process. Okay, so what he's saying in plain English is this. If a buzzer rings, we don't just blindly automatically react to it like robots. The buzzer represents the shock. We think about it. We actually process it in our minds. It was a massive, game-changing realization in the science that there is a vivid representational thought process happening inside us that absolutely must be studied.
And just like that, the rigid walls of behaviorism began to crumble, and we officially entered the cognitive revolution. It kicked off really rapidly in the 1950s. Psychologists finally moved past those simple stimulus-response models. They warmly welcomed the mind back into psychology. Suddenly, it was not only acceptable but totally essential to study memory, language, and complex problem-solving. Aided by the brand-new invention of computers, scientists began to explore the human mind as a magnificent, dynamic information processor.
We've traveled all the way from ancient skulls to advanced cognitive science. The famous psychoanalyst Carl Jung once suggested that through the centuries, we have discovered many partial truths about human nature, but we often confuse those pieces for the whole truth. So, my final question for you today is this. Looking back at the behaviorists, the psychoanalysts, the cognitive scientists, which school of thought captured your truth? Are they all just pieces of a much larger puzzle, leaving us still searching for the ultimate mystery of the human mind? Think about that the next time you catch yourself making a quick decision or feeling an unexpected emotion. Class is dismissed. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning your world.
Hey everyone!